The day had been long, heavier than most. My head throbbed with the pressure of deadlines and endless tasks. By the time I got home, all I wanted was silence. I slipped out of my shoes and let my bag drop onto the floor, the soft thud echoing in the quietness of our living room. My husband, Ian, was sitting on the couch, flipping through a book, his glasses sliding slightly down his nose. He looked up when he heard me and smiled, the kind of smile that still made my heart soften even after years of being married. "You look exhausted," he said gently, closing the book and setting it aside. His voice was warm, as though it carried an invisible blanket just for me. "I am," I admitted, collapsing beside him. Today felt like 3 days packed into one. Ian reached out, brushing his hand against mine. "You don't have to carry it all on your shoulders, you know." I gave him a tired laugh. "Who else will if not me?" "You have me," he replied softly, a trace of seriousness in his tone. "Always." His words lingered in the air, heavier than any comfort I had expected. He wasn't the kind of man to throw around declarations often. When he said something, it always felt like it came from deep within. I rested my head against the back of the couch, trying to untangle the tightness in my shoulders. Without saying anything more, Ian stood up and walked toward our bedroom. For a moment, I thought maybe he was giving me space, but then he returned holding a small bottle of oil in his hand. "What's that for?" I asked curiously. "You've been complaining about your neck and shoulders for weeks now," he said matter-of-factly. "Sit straight. I'll give you a massage." I raised an eyebrow. "Since when do you know how to give massages?" "Since YouTube taught me," he said with a playful grin. I laughed, the first real laugh of the day. "All right, let's see what you've got." I shifted on the couch, turning my back slightly to him. He poured a little oil into his hands and rubbed them together before resting them gently on my shoulders. The warmth of his palms seeped into my skin, and for a second, I almost forgot to breathe. His touch was careful, deliberate, not rushed. He pressed into the knots with just enough pressure to make me sigh in relief. "You're really tense," he murmured, his fingers tracing slow circles near my neck. "That's my life these days," I admitted, closing my eyes. "Meetings, deadlines, endless phone calls. Sometimes I feel like I'm just a machine." "You're not a machine," he whispered close to my ear. "You're my wife. You're human. And you need to be cared for too." The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. I felt a lump forming in my throat. His hands worked steadily, easing the stiffness from my muscles, and with every gentle movement, something inside me seemed to unravel. Not just the tension in my body, but the walls I had unconsciously built from stress and fatigue. For a long while, neither of us spoke. The room was filled only with the sound of his hands moving across my shoulders, the faint hum of the evening outside, and the rhythm of our breaths. I thought it was just a massage. That's all it was supposed to be. But then his hands slowed, lingering a little longer on my arms, his thumbs brushing my skin in a way that felt different, tender, almost searching. "Ian," I whispered, opening my eyes. He leaned forward slightly, his chin resting on my shoulder. What are you doing?" "Taking care of you," he replied, his voice lower now, threaded with something deeper. I turned my head slightly and found his gaze. There was something in his eyes I couldn't name, something steady, yet vulnerable at the same time. And before I could stop myself, I felt the sting of tears in my eyes. "Hey," he said softly, noticing. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," I whispered. "It's just, I didn't realize how much I needed this. Not just the massage, but you. Us." Ian's arms slipped around me from behind, pulling me gently against him. It wasn't rushed, it wasn't demanding. It was simply him, holding me close, reminding me that I wasn't alone. In that moment, all the noise of the world faded. The stress, the deadlines, the pressure, all of it melted away in the quiet strength of his embrace. The days that followed carried a different light. Something had shifted between us, subtle yet undeniable. I found myself looking forward to evenings more than mornings, knowing that Ian would be waiting. We began to talk more, not about chores or schedules, but about us, about dreams we hadn't shared in years. He asked me about the places I wanted to visit, the books I longed to read, the things that made me laugh as a child. It felt like discovering each other all over again. peeling back the layers that time and routine had quietly wrapped around us. One evening, as we were preparing dinner together, Ian reached over to tuck a strand of hair behind my ear. "Do you know something?" he asked. "What?" I said, stirring the pot. "You're beautiful when you're focused like this." I rolled my eyes. "I look like a mess half the time." "Not to me," he said simply. His words, uncomplicated and sincere, had a way of slipping into my heart before I could guard it. Weeks turned into months, and our small rituals became anchors. Sometimes, after a long day, he'd still offer to massage my shoulders. And each time, I remembered that first evening. The surprise of it, the way his simple act had pulled me back into the center of us. But it wasn't just the massages. It was the way he held my hand when we crossed the street. The way he made sure my tea was always the right temperature. The way he listened when I spoke even if my words tumbled out in frustration. It was in the ordinary things, woven seamlessly into our days, that I found the extraordinary. One rainy night, I sat by the window, watching the drops race down the glass. Ian came and stood beside me, his arm slipping around my waist. "Do you remember the first time we got caught in the rain together?" he asked. I laughed. "Of course I do. You offered me your jacket, but it was already soaked. And you said it didn't matter," he recalled. That moment, I knew you were the person I wanted to spend my life with. I leaned into him, my heart full. "I'm glad you did." He kissed the top of my head softly and whispered, "I'll keep pulling you closer. Always." And in that whisper, I realized something. Sometimes love doesn't come crashing like thunder. Sometimes it arrives quietly, like the gentle press of hands on weary shoulders, or the warmth of arms that hold you when you didn't even know you needed to be held. I thought it was just a massage, but it was so much more. It was a reminder that love in its truest form is found in the simplest gestures, the ones that say, "I see you. I'm here. And I always will be."